Hello, welcome to Moments That Touch. Sit back and relax because the best story is about to begin.
Before we dive into today's incredible story, please hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments. Your engagement means the world to me and helps these important stories reach more people. Now, let me tell you about a boy who changed everything. The chalk scraped against the cracked asphalt, leaving white trails of numbers that seemed to dance in 7-year-old Elijah's mind. While other children played hopscotch nearby, he crouched in the corner of the abandoned lot, his small fingers moving with precision that defied his age. The equation sprawled before him wasn't from any elementary textbook. It was a complex differential equation that had appeared in his mind that morning, pulled from the quantum consciousness field where all human knowledge intersected. "Elijah, baby, come inside," his grandmother's voice carried from their apartment window 3 stories up. Martha Washington had raised him since he was 2. When his mother disappeared into the night and never returned, she watched her grandson with a mixture of pride and fear that tightened her chest daily. The boy didn't respond immediately. His mind was elsewhere, seeing patterns where others saw chaos. The numbers whispered secrets to him, revealing hidden structures in everything: the flight pattern of pigeons overhead, the rhythm of car engines passing by, even the way shadows fell across the broken concrete. He solved the equation with a final flourish, then stood, brushing chalk dust from his worn jeans. Inside their cramped apartment, the television droned about another corporate charity event. Tech mogul Richard Caldwell to visit Jefferson Elementary tomorrow, the anchor announced. Martha barely glanced up from her sewing she took in alterations to make ends meet. "Rich folks and their photo ops," she muttered, then softer, watching. Elijah arranged bottle caps in perfect geometric patterns on the floor. "Lord, what am I supposed to do with this child?" That night, as Martha tucked him in on the fold-out couch, Elijah looked up at her with those impossibly deep eyes. "Grandma, why do the numbers show me things other people can't see?" She smoothed his wild curls, her hand trembling slightly. "Some folks are just born special. Baby, your mama was the same way." She never talked about his mother, but tonight something in his eyes made her continue. She could see things too, different things. That's why she had to go away to keep you safe. "Safe from what?" Elijah asked, but Martha was already turning away, her shoulders heavy with secrets. "From people who don't understand special," she whispered, but Elijah heard her anyway. He heard everything: the rats scurrying in the walls, the couple arguing 3 floors up, the mathematical symphony of the city that never stopped playing in his mind. As he drifted to sleep, the numbers danced behind his eyelids, forming patterns that looked almost like warnings. "Tomorrow," they whispered, "tomorrow everything changes." Martha sat by the window long after Elijah's breathing deepened into sleep. She fingered the worn photo in her pocket, her daughter Amara, Elijah's mother, smiling at the camera with the same knowing eyes her son had inherited. "Keep him safe," she prayed to the cracked ceiling. Just a little longer, but in the distance, she could swear she heard the low hum of engines that didn't belong in their neighborhood. The kind of engines that had come before, 7 years ago, and taken her daughter away. She pulled her rosary tighter and prayed harder, knowing that some gifts were too powerful to hide forever. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight, each second a countdown to something Martha couldn't prevent. In his sleep, Elijah's fingers moved, solving equations that existed only in his dreams, preparing for a problem he didn't yet know was coming. The chalk dust under his fingernails glowed faintly in the moonlight, as if the numbers themselves were trying to break free. Richard Caldwell sat in the back of his Bentley, scrolling through quarterly reports with the mechanical efficiency of a man who'd forgotten how to truly see. At 45, he commanded a tech empire worth billions, but the numbers on his screen felt as empty as his penthouse apartment. His assistant, Patricia, had scheduled this school visit months ago. "Good PR," she'd said. "Community engagement. Tax write-offs. We're here, Mr. Caldwell," his driver announced, pulling up to a building that looked more like a forgotten warehouse than a place of learning. Jefferson Elementary squatted like a forgotten relic in South Chicago's poorest district. Paint peeled from its walls like dead skin, and the playground equipment stood rusted and wrapped in caution tape. Richard straightened his Italian suit and prepared his practice smile, the one that had graced 100 charity galas but never quite reached his eyes. He'd grown up in poverty himself before mathematics became his escape route. Now, returning to it felt like visiting a ghost. Inside, Principal Foster greeted him with desperate enthusiasm. "Mr. Caldwell, such an honor. The children have prepared presentations about what technology means to them." She led him through hallways that smelled of industrial disinfectant and broken dreams. The walls were covered with children's art trinkets made of construction paper. Reaching for stars drawn in fading marker, they entered the cafeteria where children sat in neat rows, their faces a sea of cautious hope and premature wisdom that poverty brings. Richard began his prepared speech about innovation and dreams, his words floating above their heads like balloons they couldn't quite reach. He talked about coding and opportunities, his voice on autopilot while his mind calculated how quickly he could leave. Then he saw the boy in the back corner, ignoring everyone, drawing on the floor with a stub of chalk, while other children fidgeted. This child with his explosion of dark curls and patched clothes was completely absorbed in his work. Richard's words faltered mid-sentence as his eyes focused on what the boy was creating. His blood too, or Ned too, ice water. The optimization problem sprawled across the cafeteria floor in perfect detail, every variable, every constraint his team had been wrestling with for 3 months. A problem so classified that only 5 people in his company had access to it. A problem worth $40 million in defense contracts that could revolutionize supply chain logistics for military operations. "Excuse me," Richard said to Principal Foster, his voice barely steady. He walked toward the boy, each step feeling like crossing into another dimension. The child didn't look up, just kept adding layers to the equation, improvements and elegant solutions flowing from his small fingers like water dot around them. Teachers began to whisper. Principal Foster hurried after him. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Caldwell. That's Elijah. He's different. Doesn't mean any harm." But Richard wasn't listening. He was watching a 7-year-old boy solve a problem that had stumped mid-graduates, and doing it with chalk on a dirty cafeteria floor as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "How?" was all Richard could manage to say, kneeling beside the boy, his expensive soup forgotten. The child finally looked up, and Richard found himself staring into eyes that seemed infinitely deep, as if they could see through time itself. Eyes that knew things, impossible things. "What's your name?" Richard found himself kneeling beside the boy, his designer suit collecting dust from the cafeteria floor. The child looked up with eyes that seemed to hold galaxies deep brown with flecks of gold that caught the fluorescent light in ways that defied physics. "Elijah," the boy said simply, then returned to his work. His small hand moved with impossible precision, adding variables and constraints to the optimization matrix. "Your problem's wrong," he added matter-of-factly. "The engineers think linearly, but the solution needs quantum probability modeling. See?" He drew a new framework that made Richard's head spin. "Time isn't constant in your supply chains. It fluctuates based on observer effect." Richard's blood chilled. This problem wasn't public. His team had signed NDA letters. The Pentagon would have his head if they knew the classified logistics algorithm was being sketched on a cold cafeteria floor. "Where did you see this?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Elijah shrugged, a 7-year-old's gesture that contrasted sharply with the graduate-level mathematics flowing from his chalk. "I see lots of things, patterns everywhere. Like how your watch is running 3.7 seconds slow because the temperature differential between your wrist and the air creates micro-expansions in the metal. Or how Mrs. Foster's worried about budget cuts because she keeps touching her temple, same spot where she gets stress migraines." Principal Foster approached, her face flushed with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Caldwell. Elijah's special. He doesn't mean to be disruptive. His grandmother does her best." But she reached for the boy's hand. "Come on, Elijah. Let Mr. Caldwell finish his presentation." But Richard grabbed his phone, his hands shaking as he photographed the solution. "No, wait. Let him finish." He watched in stunned silence as Elijah completed the problem, then added improvements his team hadn't even considered. The boy incorporated elements of chaos theory that shouldn't be accessible to anyone without classified clearance, let alone a child. When Elijah finally stood, chalk dust like constellation patterns on his dark skin, he tilted his head at Richard. "You're scared," the boy observed. "Not of me, of what I know, but you're also curious. The fear and curiosity are fighting inside you. I can see their probability waves colliding." "Elijah," a woman's voice cut through the cafeteria. Martha Washington stood in the doorway, her cleaning uniform still damp with sweat from her morning shift. Her eyes found her grandson, then Richard, then the equations on the floor. Her face went pale. "Oh, Lord, not again. Grandma." Elijah ran to her, a normal child for just a moment, but Martha's eyes stayed locked on Richard's, and in them he saw a terror that made his own confusion seem trivial. "We need to go," Martha said quietly. "Now, wait." Richard stood, his mind racing. "I need to understand. This is impossible. He shouldn't know these things." Martha's jaw tightened. "Lots of things shouldn't be possible. Mr. Rich Man doesn't stop them from being true." She took Elijah's hand, but the boy pulled back. "He's not bad, Grandma," Elijah said, looking between them. "The numbers like him. They say he's important. They say he's going to help when the dark cars come." Martha's grip tightened on her grandson's hand until her knuckles went white. "What did you just say?" "The dark cars," Elijah repeated, his young voice matter of fact. "They're coming in 17 days, 4 hours, and 32 minutes. But Mr. Richard will be there. The numbers showed me." Martha Washington's apartment was a testament to making do with less. Every surface served multiple purposes. The dining table doubled as her sewing station. The couch became Elijah's bed at night. Religious icons competed for wall space, with Elijah's drawings complex mathematical proofs rendered in crayon and marker, architectural blueprints sketched on grocery bags, and something else. Something that made Richard's breath catch. Star charts. Not just any star charts, calculations for stellar positions that wouldn't be visible from Earth for another 50 years. Theoretical physics equations that merged quantum mechanics with consciousness theory. And in the center of it all, a drawing of a woman who looked like an older version of Elijah, surrounded by numbers that seemed to pulse with their own light. "That's my mama," Elijah said quietly, noticing Richard's stare. "I dream about her sometimes. She talks to me through the numbers." Martha shot her grandson a warning look, then turned to Richard and Principal Foster. "Thank you for bringing him home. We'll be fine now." Her tone brooked no argument, but Richard couldn't leave. "Not yet. Mrs. Washington, I know this is strange, but your grandson just solved a problem worth millions. A classified problem. I need to understand how that's possible. What you need is to forget you ever saw us," Martha said firmly. "Nothing good comes from people like you taking interest in people like us. I've seen it before." Her hand unconsciously moved to a scar on her neck, barely visible above her collar. "Grandma's scared because of what happened to Mama," Elijah said, arranging sugar packets in a complex pattern on the table. "But you're not like the others. The numbers sing differently around you, broken songs that want to be whole." Richard felt exposed, as if the child could see through his expensive suit to the emptiness inside. "I just want to help," he said, surprising himself with the honesty. "Your grandson has a gift. With the right education, the right opportunities, the right cage." "You mean," Martha interrupted, "they all say that at first. Just want to help, think of his potential. Then come the tests, the locked rooms, the men in suits who smile, while they turn children into weapons." "Grandma," Elijah said softly, "the probability streams are shifting. He needs to know." The boy turned to Richard, his young face suddenly ancient. "In 17 days, they'll come for me like they came for Mama. But this time will be different because you'll be here." The numbers had been preparing for this moment for years. "That's why they showed me your problem to bring you to us." The lights in the apartment flickered. On the wall, Elijah's drawing seemed to move, numbers rearranging themselves into new patterns. Principal Foster gasped and backed toward the door, but Richard stood transfixed. "What are you?" he whispered. Elijah smiled sadly. "I'm what happens when evolution takes a quantum leap, when human consciousness starts to merge with the mathematical substrate of reality. Mama was the first stable expression. I'm the second. And if they catch me, they'll try to make more." His eyes went distant. "Lots more. The numbers show me armies of children like me, all serving whoever controls them. That's the future that mustn't happen." Martha pulled her grandson close. "Enough. You've said enough." She looked at Richard with desperate eyes. "You want to help, then leave. Forget you ever met us. Let us disappear before." A sound cut through the air, barely audible, but somehow wrong. Like reality hiccuping, every piece of glass in the apartment cracked simultaneously. Spiderweb fractures spreading in perfect mathematical spirals. Over the following weeks, Richard found himself returning to the neighborhood, drawn by a compulsion he couldn't name. He told himself it was scientific curiosity, but Patricia noticed the change. Her boss actually seemed alive for the first time in years. He canceled meetings, delegated responsibilities, and spent hours in dusty libraries, researching quantum consciousness and evolutionary biology. "Why do you keep coming back?" Elijah asked one afternoon, sitting on the rusty fire escape while Richard stood awkwardly in his designer shoes. The boy was sketching equations in a notebook. Richard had brought him advanced calculus that flowed as naturally as breathing. "Your optimization problem is solved. Your company will make millions. Stock price up 12%. What do you want from me?" The directness caught Richard off guard. He'd spent his life surrounded by people who spoke in corporate euphemisms, who hid agendas behind spreadsheets. "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe I'm trying to understand how you see the world. When I was your age, my father—" He paused, surprised. By his own openness, my father thought emotions were weakness. Numbers were safe, predictable. "Build your fortress of logic," he said, "and nothing can hurt you, but it's lonely in the fortress." Elijah finished. "The numbers tell me about your father, Harold Caldwell. Died alone in his study, surrounded by awards and achievements that meant nothing in the end. You were in Tokyo, closing a deal. You've been closing deals ever since, trying to fill the silence he left behind." Richard's throat tightened. He'd never told anyone about missing his father's death, about the guilt that gnawed at him. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because the numbers remember everything," Elijah said simply. "Every choice creates ripples in the probability matrix. I can see the ripples. Trace them back to their sources. It's not mind reading its pattern recognition on a quantum scale." He looked up at Richard with those impossible eyes. "You're a good man who's forgotten how to be human. That's why the numbers brought you to us. You need us as much as we need you. But lately," Elijah's expression darkened. "Lately, the patterns are screaming. Something big is coming. Not just the dark cars, something bigger, a divergence point where humanity either evolves or—" He shuddered. "Or we become something else, something worse." Before Richard could respond, a crack like thunder split the air. Every window in the building shattered simultaneously, raining glass like deadly snow. But around Elijah, the shards hung suspended in midair, forming a perfect sphere of protection. The boy's eyes had gone pure white, and equations materialized in the air around him, not chalk or ink, but pure light. Symbols from no human language dancing in three-dimensional space. Martha burst through the door, her face a mask of terror and resignation. "Not again," she whispered. "Lord help us. Not again, Grandma." Elijah's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. "They found us, the hunters. They're using Mama's quantum signature to track me. I can feel them reaching through the probability streams." The glass fell harmlessly to the ground, tinkling like wind chimes. Elijah's eyes returned to normal, but he swayed, exhausted. Richard caught him before he fell, his mind reeling. Whatever secret this boy carried, it was bigger than genius. It was something that defied every law of physics he thought he knew. "We have to go," Martha said, already pulling a packed bag from behind the couch. "I always knew this day would come," but Elijah shook his head weakly. "No more running. The numbers show me every path where we run ends the same way. They catch us, use me, create the dark future." He looked at Richard. "Except the past where you help. Those are different, clouded, uncertain. But there's hope in the uncertainty." Richard's phone buzzed urgently, 17 messages from Patricia, each more frantic. He read the last one. "Boss, something's wrong. Government agents here asking about you, about that school. High-level clearance. They know something. Get out now." "His mother could do it too," Martha said quietly after they put Elijah to bed. The boy had collapsed after his display, his small body overwhelmed by channeling forces beyond human comprehension. She poured Richard coffee with shaking hands. He'd insisted on staying, needing answers more than safety. Started when Amara was about his age. Small things at first, knowing when the phone would ring, finding lost items without looking. Then it got stronger. Martha's eyes grew distant, lost in memories. By the time she was 15, she could calculate probability streams, see potential futures. The government noticed when she prevented that terrorist attack in Detroit, called in an anonymous tip about a bomb that hadn't been planted yet. Richard's rational mind wanted to reject every word, but he'd seen the glass, felt the electricity in the air, watched equations write themselves in light. What happened to her? "They came for her." Martha's voice dropped to a whisper. "Government folks, they said, but they weren't normal government. Black budget. the kind that don't officially exist. They've been tracking our family for generations, waiting for the gift to fully manifest. But Elijah's power only became detectable 3 weeks ago when he turned 7. That's when I knew they'd come soon. Tears tracked down her weathered cheeks. Amara knew they were coming, saw it in the probability streams weeks before. She could have run, but she was pregnant with Elijah. She made a deal. She made a sacrifice. Went with them voluntarily if they promised to leave her baby alone. Said his gift would be stronger than hers, that he'd need time to grow into it safely. Martha's hands trembled. She walked out that door 7 years ago. The numbers told her she'd never come back, but she went anyway, for him. And you think they'll come for Elijah? I know they will. The gift. It's generational. Gets stronger each time. My mother can only see patterns. I can sense them, but can't interpret them and skip me mostly. Amara could predict and slightly influence probability, but Elijah, she looked at the sleeping boy. So small and fragile, Elijah can reshape reality with mathematics. He just doesn't know how to control it yet, and when he can't control it, she didn't need to finish. Richard had seen what happened when the boy's emotions spiked. The broken glass was just the beginning. What would happen when he hit puberty? When teenage emotions mixed with reality-bending powers? Richard's phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. Boss, get out now. They have warrants. Something about national security. They're tracking your phone. He showed Martha the message. Her face. When ashen, they know. They always know when a new one manifests. The quantum signature is like a beacon to their sensors. She stood, moving with sudden purpose. We have minutes, maybe less. But as she spoke, Elijah sat up in bed, his eyes, that airy wide again. No, he said in a voice that seemed to echo from everywhere and nowhere. Running time is over. They're already here. 17 days became 17 minutes became now. Time isn't linear when you're being hunted by people who understand quantum mechanics. Outside, the sound of engines grew louder. Richard looked out the window to see black SUVs surrounding the building, men in tactical gear taking positions. His heart hammered, but Elijah's voice was calm. Mr. Richard, you have to decide now. Are you ready to protect what the world isn't ready to understand? The numbers show me the futures. In one, you walk away, and darkness swallows everything. In the other, the boy smiled sadly. In the other, you help us change the world. But the cost will be everything you've built. Your company, your reputation, your old life. Choose quickly. They're already in the stairwell. The door shuddered under a heavy impact. Martha grabbed Elijah, pulling him close. Richard stood at the crossroads of his life, knowing that whatever happened next would shatter the comfortable fortress of logic he'd spent 45 years building. In the distance, he could hear boots on stairs, destiny climbing closer with every step. The lock began to turn, and time seemed to stop, waiting for his answer. The door exploded inward, but Richard had already made his choice. As tactical teams flooded the small apartment, he stepped forward, placing himself between the armed men and the small family behind him. I'm Richard Caldwell, he announced, his voice carrying the authority of boardrooms and billion-dollar deals. These people are under my protection. I want to speak to whoever's in charge. The soldiers paused, weapons trained but fingers off triggers. A woman stepped through their ranks mid-40s, silver streaking her dark hair, eyes like winter frost. Mr. Caldwell, I'm Director Sarachan, Department of Evolutionary Assets, a department that doesn't exist, investigating phenomena that can't be real. She looked past him to where Elijah stood, small hand in his grandmother's iron grip. Hello, Elijah. We've been looking for you. I know, Elijah said simply. You've been looking since 3 weeks ago when I turned 7. That's when my quantum signature became strong enough for your sensors. Before that, I was just potential. Now I'm kinetic. Director Chen's composure cracked slightly. Your mother is safe. She's helping us understand. You're lying. Elijah interrupted, his child's voice carrying absolute certainty. The probability of her being alive is 12.7%. The probability of her being safe is 0. I can see the guilt fractals surrounding your words, Director. They're very loud. Martha pulled Elijah closer. You can't have him. I don't care what authority you think you have, Mrs. Washington. Chen's voice softened with what might have been genuine regret. We're not the villains here. There are others, foreign governments, private corporations who would use your grandson as a weapon. We're trying to protect him and humanity. By locking children in cages, Richard found his voice. By experimenting on them, Chen turned those frost eyes on him. By understanding them, Mr. Caldwell, what you've witnessed is just the beginning. Elijah represents the next stage of human evolution. His mother was the first stable expression. Without guidance, without control, these abilities, she gestured to the shattered windows. A teenage tantrum could level city blocks. An adult having a nightmare could tear holes in reality itself. She's not wrong, Elijah said quietly, and everyone turned to stare at the 7-year-old boy who suddenly seemed to carry the weight of worlds. The numbers show me what I could become without help. It's dark, very dark. He looked at Richard, but they also show me what happens in their facilities. The other children who didn't survive the tests, the ones who went mad when they pushed too hard, too fast. There were mistakes, Chen admitted, in the early days, before we understood, before your mother taught us, before my mother traded her freedom for knowledge. You'd used to create more like us, Elijah finished. She fed you just enough to keep you from the worst mistakes, but not enough to succeed. She's been playing a 17-year game, director, and it ends tonight. The lights in the apartment building went out. Not just the apartment, the entire block plunged into darkness. In the black, Elijah's eyes glowed with that eerie white light, and equations began materializing in the air, casting everything in an otherworldly glow. Elijah, don't. Chen reached for something in her jacket, not a weapon, but a device that hummed with frequency. The dampener will help. It'll make the voices quiet. Nitrogen monoxide. Elijah's voice thundered with impossible volume. The equations spun faster, reality bending around them. Richard felt his atoms trying to scatter, held together only by proximity to the child. No more dampeners, no more cages, no more stolen children. Through the chaos, a new voice cut through, transmitted directly into everyone's minds. Female, familiar, impossible. Hello, my beautiful boy. Amara Washington spoke through the quantum phone. It's time. Martha collapsed to her knees, tears streaming. Amara, baby, is that you? The equations around Elijah shifted, forming to shape a woman made of light and mathematics, beautiful and terrible. She looked like an older version of Elijah, but her eyes held the weight of years spent in places humans weren't meant to exist. Mama, Director Chen breathed. That's what we called her. The mother of the new age. She's been gone for 7 years. Transformed during a quantum experiment 5 years into her captivity. Not lost. Amara's voice resonated through dimensions. Transformed. I've been gone 7 years, but spent the last 5 scattered across probability streams. After they pushed their experiments too far, existing in all futures simultaneously. The figure of light touched Elijah's face with hands made of equations. My brave boy, you've grown so much. I'm sorry I couldn't be there. I understand, Mama, Elijah whispered. The numbers explained. You had to become something else to save us all. Richard watched this impossible reunion, his rational mind finally shattering completely. Behind him, Patricia stood frozen. He'd called her an hour ago, telling her everything, needing at least one person from his old life to witness this new reality. What is happening? Amara turned those light-filled eyes to him. You're happening, Richard Caldwell. The random element that changes everything. In 10 million futures, you walk away. In one, you stay. That's the future we're fighting for, the one where humanity evolves with compassion instead of control. This is impossible, Chen said, but her voice lacked conviction. You can't be here. The energy required would kill a normal human, yes, Amara agreed, but I'm not human anymore. I'm what Elijah will become, given time and freedom. What all the children could become if you'd stop trying to weaponize evolution. She gestured, and every agent's weapon dissolved into component atoms, reforming as flowers that bloomed impossibly in the darkness. I've spent 5 years exploring the quantum realm, seeing all possible futures, most end badly. Humanity tears itself apart fighting over the new children. Nations fall, millions die. But there's another way, Elijah continued, his small voice somehow harmonizing with his mother's. A school, not a prison, a real school, where children like me can learn to control our gifts without fear, where baseline humans and evolved ones work together, where Mr. Richard's resources and Director Chen's knowledge combine with Grandma's love. Chen laughed bitterly. You expect me to believe the government will just allow, the government will have no choice. Amara interrupted. In 72 hours, 17 more children will manifest abilities globally. In a month, hundreds, The quantum cascade has begun. Humanity is evolving whether you're ready or not. The only question is whether you'll help guide it or try to control it. Show them, Elijah said softly, show them the two futures, reality split like a screen. On one side, cities burning, children in cells. Humanity at war with itself evolved against baseline. Nation against nation, fear consuming everything. Richard saw himself in that future, old and broken, having walked away when he could have helped. On the other side, something beautiful. A campus by the ocean where children learn to bend reality with joy instead of fear. Where Martha taught ethics alongside quantum mechanics. Where Richard's fortune built bridges between the branches of humanity. Where even Director Chen smiled, watching young gods learn to be human first. Choose, Amara said, her form beginning to flicker. I can't maintain this projection much longer. The energy cost. She touched Martha's face. Mama, I'm sorry. I love you. Take care of our boy. Don't go. Martha sobbed. Please, baby, don't leave again. I'm not leaving. I'm becoming something else. Something that can protect all the children when the cascade accelerates. Amara was fading. Equations unraveling. Elijah knows what to do. Trust him. Trust Richard. Even trust Director Chenchis. Not evil, just afraid. Wait. Chen stepped forward. The others, the children who died, were they? Transformed, not dead. Amara confirmed, we're building something in the quantum realm, a safety net for when humanity takes its next step, but we need help from this side. She was almost gone now, just whispers of light. 72 hours. Director, will you be ready to be better than your fears? The light vanished. The power returned. They stood in a damaged apartment that suddenly seemed small for the decision they faced. Elijah swayed, caught by Richard before he could fall. So, the boy said weakly, looking between the billionaire, the government director, and his grandmother, who wants to help me build a school for young gods? 72 hours. They had 72 hours before the next wave of manifestations, and Richard felt every second ticking away like a countdown to apocalypse. He'd moved them all to his penthouse. Martha, Elijah, even Director Chen and a small team of her scientists. The space that had felt empty for years now buzzed with activity. Media chaos erupted outside as leaked footage of the apartment incident went viral, theories spreading faster than facts. The resonance patterns are increasing exponentially. Dr. Hassan, Chen's lead researcher, pointed to screens showing global quantum fluctuations. If the boy's mother was right, we'll see 17 new manifestations within the next 6 hours. Geographic distribution seems random, but it's not random. Elijah interrupted from where he sat cross-legged on Richard's expensive carpet, surrounded by holographic displays he'd somehow conjured from thin air. They'll appear in clusters. Beijing, Mumbai, Sao Paulo, Lagos, London, places where human consciousness is dense, where the quantum field is already stressed by millions of minds. He waved his hand, and the displays reorganized. Here, these are the exact coordinates. Chen leaned forward. How can you be sure? Because I can feel them, Elijah said simply. Little sparks of consciousness starting to burn brighter. They're scared. They don't understand what's happening. His young face creased with worry. There's a girl in Mumbai, Priya. She's 6. Her parents think she's possessed because she keeps making their electronics display her nightmares. And a boy in Lagos who accidentally turned his classroom into a probability storm. They're terrified. Richard found himself kneeling beside the boy. Can you contact them like your mother contacted us? Not yet. I'm not strong enough. But Elijah closed his eyes, and the air shimmered. I can send them dreams. Let them know they're not alone. That help is coming. Martha watched from the kitchen, making sandwiches with shaking hands. My baby's trying to save the world, and I'm making peanut butter and jelly, she muttered. He's still 7, Richard said gently. He still needs to eat, does he? Chen interjected. His cellular structure is already showing signs of quantum entanglement. He might not need food the way we do, might not need anything the way we do. I need grandma's sandwiches, Elijah said firmly, opening his eyes. And I need people to stop talking about me like I'm not here. That's how you lost the others, forgetting they were children first. Miracles second. An uncomfortable silence fell. Chen's team exchanged glances, and Richard saw the guilt Elijah had mentioned, fractals of regret surrounding every scientist who'd pushed too hard, too fast. You're right, Chen said finally. We forgot. I forgot. They were so extraordinary. that we stop seeing the ordinary. She pulled out a secure phone. I need to make some calls. If we're really doing this, we need resources, safe houses in every major city, extraction teams that know how to approach frightened children, not capture assets. I can help with that. Richard found himself saying, private jets, secure facilities, medical teams used to discretion. He pulled out his own phone. Patricia, yes, I know what time it is. I need you to liquidate the Cayman accounts, all of them, and set up meetings with our international offices. Yes, I'm sure. No, I haven't lost my mind. I found it. As the adults made plans, Elijah wandered to the window, looking out at the city lights. Richard joined him, and for a moment they stood in companionable silence. The numbers show me different futures now, Elijah said softly, better ones, because you stayed. I'm not a hero, Elijah. I'm just a man who built walls out of money and math. Sometimes that's what heroes are, the boy replied. People who choose to tear down their walls when the world needs them. He pressed his small hand against the glass. Can you feel it? The change coming? In 100 years, humanity will look back at this moment as the turning point. The moment we chose wonder over fear. Below them, the city hummed with 8 million minds, unaware that evolution was knocking at the door, and somewhere in Mumbai, a little girl named Priya stopped crying as beautiful equations danced through her dreams, whispering, "You're not alone. The first extraction went wrong. Horribly, catastrophically wrong. After 48 hours of frantic, successful rescues that the media couldn't quite capture or explain, Carlos in Sao Paulo became their first near disaster." Richard watched the feed from Brazil in horror as the apartment building began to fold in on itself, reality crumpling like paper. The boy Carlos, aged 9, stood at the center of the distortion, screaming as probability storms raged around him. "Pull the team out," Chen barked into her calm. "Full retreat. Now, we can't leave him." One of the agents protested over the feed. "He's just a kid." The building twisted, architecture becoming abstract art. Carlos's parents lay unconscious, knocked out by the initial wave of his manifestation. The boy's terror fed the storm, each sob adding new impossibilities to the maelstrom. "Let me try," Elijah said quietly. He'd been watching from Richard's penthouse, tears streaming down his young face. "I can reach him." "Absolutely not," Martha said immediately. "You're not strong enough. What happened with your mama nearly killed? You and Carlos will die if I don't try." Elijah looked at the adults surrounding him. "This is why we're building the school, isn't it? So children don't have to face this alone." Chen hesitated. "The energy requirement. I'll anchor him," Richard said suddenly. Everyone turned to stare. "I don't have abilities, but I have something else. Stability, logic. A mind that refuses to accept impossibility even when it's happening right in front of me." He took Elijah's small hand. "Use me as a ground wire." "That's not how it works," Dr. Hassan began. "Actually," Elijah tilted his head, "it might be. Mr. Richard's mind is extraordinarily ordered, almost crystalline in its structure. I could use that stability to channel." He stopped, looking at his grandmother. "Grandma, I have to try. You know I do." Martha closed her eyes, and Richard saw her age 10 years in 10 seconds. "Do it. But you come back to me, baby. You hear me? You come back." Elijah nodded, then closed his eyes. Richard felt the moment. The boy's consciousness touched his like ice water, flooding his neurons, like trying to hold lightning in his bare hands. Through their connection, he felt Elijah reach across thousands of miles, through space that wasn't space, to touch another. Frightened child's mind. "Carlos, listen to me. My name is Elijah. I'm like you. You're not broken. You're not cursed. You're evolved. Make it stop." Carlos's mental voice was raw terror. "I didn't mean to. The building my parents, I know. The same thing happened to me, but you can control it. Feel the numbers, Carlos. Don't fight them. Dance with them through the feed." They watched Carlos slowly stop struggling against the probability storm. The building began to stabilize, reality reasserting itself one equation at a time. But the effort was draining Elijah. Richard felt the boy's strength flagging, his small body shaking with the strain. "That's enough," Richard said firmly. "Elijah, come back." "Almost. There." Elijah's nose began to bleed, crimson drops falling onto expensive carpet. "Just need to show him the path." The building in Sao Paulo gave one last shudder, then settled. Carlos collapsed but breathing. The storm dissipated. Chen's team rushed in, medics checking the boy and his parents. Elijah's eyes snapped open, and he promptly vomited on Richard's Italian leather shoes. "Sorry," he whispered, then passed out. Richard caught him, cradling the small body that had just saved lives from half a world away. "No apologies necessary," he said softly. "Ever." Martha was there instantly, checking her grandson's pulse, smoothing his hair. "He's okay," she breathed. "Thank God. He's okay." "He's more than okay," Chen said, watching the feeds as her team successfully extracted Carlos and his family. "He just did something our entire department said was impossible. Long-range quantum consciousness projection without technological assistance." She looked at Richard with new respect. "And you anchored him, a baseline human serving as a stability matrix for quantum manipulation. Do you understand what this means?" Richard looked down at the unconscious boy in his arms, this child who was reshaping everything he thought he knew about reality. "It means the school isn't just for the evolved children, it's for all of us. We're all going to have to learn together." Chen nodded slowly. "For more to find in the next 24 hours, we've saved 13. And if they all manifest like Carlos, they won't," Elijah mumbled, stirring slightly. "Each one's different. Priya in Mumbai makes illusions. Tommy in London shifts probability. Lynn in Beijing." He frowned. "Lynn scares me. She doesn't just bend reality. She remembers futures that haven't happened yet." By the 60-hour mark, they had successfully extracted 16 of the 17 children. Each rescue told a story of parents who thought their children were possessed, governments who wanted to weaponize them, corporations who saw profit in evolution. The media frenzy had reached fever pitch, with footage of impossible events flooding social networks faster than governments could suppress them. But with each child saved, Elijah grew stronger, more confident. He was becoming what his mother had prophesied, a bridge between two versions of humanity. The makeshift command center in Richard's penthouse looked like something from science fiction. Holographic displays showed quantum fluctuations worldwide. Chen's scientists worked alongside Richard's engineers, building containment protocols that felt more like meditation rooms than cells. Martha had turned the kitchen into a comfort station, working with a hastily assembled team to prepare simple, comforting meals. "One more," Chen said, exhaustion clear in her voice. "Lynn in Beijing. But she's already in MSS custody. This won't be a rescue, it'll be an extraction from a government facility." "She knows we're coming," Elijah said. He sat in the center of the chaos, simultaneously 7 years old and ancient, playing with building blocks that rearrange themselves according to non-Euclidean geometry. She remembers tomorrow, remembers all possible tomorrows. She's telling them things to keep them confused, but she's also very scared. Richard's secure phone rang. Patricia's voice was tense. "Sir, we have a bigger problem. Federal agents are surrounding the building, media helicopters everywhere. They're demanding access, and half the internet thinks you're either starting a cult or harboring alien children. Stall them," Richard ordered. "Legal team, everything. Buy us time." "Time for what?" Dr. Hassan asked. "We can't extract a child from Chinese custody while surrounded by—" "We don't need to," Elijah interrupted. "Lynn's coming to us. She remembers how." He stood, and Richard noticed the boy seemed taller somehow, as if reality couldn't quite decide how big he should be. "It's time to stop hiding. Time to show them what we're really building. All of them, the whole world." "Elijah, no." Martha reached for him. "You're not ready. The energy cost will be shared." Elijah smiled. 16 evolved children, all connected, all helping, and anchored by baselines who choose to bridge the gap. He looked at Richard, at Chen, at the scientists who'd stopped seeing children as test subjects. "Are you ready to show humanity its future?" Before anyone could answer, reality hiccuped. Every screen in New York, every television, computer monitor, phone display, digital billboard flickered and showed the same image: Elijah standing in a garden that didn't exist yet, surrounded by children whose eyes held stars, people of Earth. Elijah's voice spoke from every speaker simultaneously, the 16 rescued children lending their power to his broadcast. "Don't be afraid. Evolution isn't ending, its beginning. We are your children, your future, your hope, and we choose to grow together, not apart." The image shifted, showing the school Richard's money would build, the programs Chen's knowledge would create, the love Martha's wisdom would nurture. Children learning to bend reality with joy, baseline humans working alongside evolved ones. A future where difference was celebrated, not feared. In 12 hours, Elijah continued, representatives from every government will be invited to witness something wonderful. The birth of a new age, guided by compassion instead of control. We are not weapons. We are not threats. We are your children, and we choose peace. The broadcast ended. In the command center, alarms screamed as every intelligence agency on Earth went into overdrive. Chen's phone rang nonstop. Richard's legal team reported federal agents withdrawing, replaced by confused negotiators. Social media exploded with reactions: fear, wonder, hope, and everything in between. What have you done? Chen whispered. What needed doing? Elijah replied. No more secrets. No more shadow departments. Evolution in the light, where it belongs. He swayed, caught by Richard. But first, we need Lin. And we need to do it before certain people decide that killing 17 children is easier than accepting change. Through the windows, they could see military helicopters circling the building. The 60-hour mark passed, and somewhere in Beijing, a little girl named Lin closed her eyes and remembered the path to safety. A path that bent through dimensions only she could see. Here she comes, Elijah whispered, and reality rippled as a 6-year-old girl stepped out of tomorrow and into Richard's penthouse, clutching a worn teddy bear. Hello, Lin said in perfect English she'd learned 3 years from now. I remember you all. We're going to build something beautiful together. But first, can someone please call my parents? In this timeline, they think I've been kidnapped. The quantum garden materialized at dawn on the third day, exactly where Elijah had shown it would be, a space between spaces, accessible from 17 points around the globe. Not world leaders themselves, but their most trusted representatives. Scientists, military advisors, and journalists found themselves standing in an impossible place where physics obeyed the whims of children's imagination. The actual leaders watched through quantum encrypted feeds. Safe in their bunkers, but unable to look away, Richard stood with Elijah at the center, the boy's small hand in his. Around them, the 17 evolved children floated in meditation poses, their combined consciousness holding this miracle together. Martha was there, tears streaming as she watched her grandson remake the world. Chen stood with her team, wonder replacing fear on faces that had seen too much darkness. This is what we offer, Elijah spoke, his voice carrying to every corner of the garden and through the feeds to bunkers worldwide. Not domination, but collaboration. Not replacement, but enhancement. The evolved and the baseline, working together to solve problems that neither could face alone. Presidents and prime ministers watched through their screens as the children demonstrated not weapons, but wonders. Pre-painted illusions of clean energy solutions that could actually work. Carlos restructured matter to clean polluted water. Lin showed futures where humanity reached the stars, guided by those who could navigate probability itself. But this requires trust. Elijah continued. No more secret programs, no more stolen children. We will build schools, real schools where the evolved can learn control and the baseline can learn understanding. Where my grandmother's wisdom matters as much as quantum equations. Where people like Mr. Richard prove that evolution isn't just about genetics. It's about choosing to be better. And if we refuse? The U.S. president spoke through her representative, a general whose eyes showed he'd already been convinced. Elijah's expression grew sad. Then you'll lose. Not to us we choose peace, but to fear. To the nations that embrace change while you cling to the past. To the future that arrives whether you're ready or not. He gestured, and the garden showed visions: China working with evolved children to solve climate change, India using probability manipulation to end poverty, Africa becoming the cradle of a new renaissance. The cascade can't be stopped, Dr. Hassan added, finding his voice. Our projections show thousands of manifestations within the year, millions within the decade. This isn't an invasion, it's emergence. Your own children, awakening to possibilities. Silence stretched across the quantum link. Then, unexpectedly, it was broken by laughter. A little girl had wandered into the British Prime Minister's bunker, his 6-year-old daughter. She clapped her hands at the screen. Pretty, can I learn to do that? Daddy, maybe you will. Sweetheart, the PM said softly, his decision made. Through the feed, other leaders saw their own children, their own futures reflected back. 72 hours. The Chinese premier announced through his representative. Each nation needs time to prepare their people, to draft new laws. To take all the time you need. Elijah interrupted gently. This isn't a deadline, it's a beginning. While you debate and prepare, we'll be building, teaching, growing. Our doors will open when you're ready. The garden began to fade, but not before one last miracle. Amara appeared, no longer the light being from before, but something new, evolutions. Mother, watching her children take their first steps, she touched Elijah's face, smiled at Martha, nodded to Richard. Thank you, she said simply, for choosing hope. Reality reasserted itself. They stood in a field in upstate New York that Richard had purchased 60 hours ago. Around them, construction crews were already breaking ground on the first academy, not a hasty construction, but a carefully planned ceremony at beginning. The 17 children sat in a circle, exhausted but smiling. So, Chen said, looking at the blueprints that seemed to draw themselves, plans that would take months to properly build but were already perfect in conception. Where do we start? With lunch, Martha said firmly. These children have been reshaping reality all morning. They need sandwiches. Richard laughed, the first genuine laugh he'd had in years. Sandwiches it is. And then we build a future. Elijah looked up at him, 7 years old again, genius and child in perfect balance. The numbers are singing. Mr. Richard, can you hear them? And somehow, impossibly, he could. Not the cold equations of profit and loss, but the warm mathematics of connection and possibility, the song of evolution welcoming humanity home. As they walked toward the temporary shelters where they began their work, Elijah's hand in his, Richard realized his father had been wrong. Numbers weren't a fortress against feeling, they were a bridge to understanding, and on that bridge, humanity would learn to dance between what was and what could be. The sun rose on a world forever changed, and in classrooms yet to be built. The future prepared its first lesson. Evolution isn't about becoming different. It's about becoming. Hold up behind them. Lin tugged on Chen's sleeve. Director, in 3 months, you're going to get a call about a boy in Antarctica whose dreams freeze reality. You should probably start planning for cold weather gear now. Chen looked down at the little girl who remembered tomorrow. Thank you for the warning. That's what family does, Lin said simply, and in those 4 words, the old world ended and the new one began.